Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Jerri,
Jamie,
we look really fancy today.
we do.
I know.
I feel like I'm going to the Academy Awards or the Grammys or the
Yeah.
Oscars.
I've never worn this thing, but I figured it would be good and appropriate and celebratory for today, because today is what?
It's our 100th podcast.
Yes.
So exciting.
Right.
So exciting. And you're going to pop some champagne for us?
I'm trying.
Do it. While you're doing that.
Got it. All right.
Fabulous.
Ooh.
And I will pour myself a glass of wine.
So there we go.
Absolutely.
So let's
Yes.
do it.
Let's
Cheers
do
to
it.
100 episodes.
Cheers to you.
Yay.
And cheers to Marvin, our wonderful podcast partner that does all the behind the scenes work for us.
Marvin, we love you. Thank you so much. Cheers to you.
But for our 100th episode, we decided that we would take all of those different categories we have and kind of pick up a few out of each category to highlight some of our guests. Now, this was a monumental task
Yes.
because it was so difficult.
Bigger than we thought.
We've had so many great guests, and so it's been hard to just select a few. But I want to start out with one of our guests. We had a guest on the podcast that is a master with words, Kevin Honeycutt.
Mm-hmm.
And he talked about our podcast, LinkedUp, as a collection of fireflies. No one can explain this better than Kevin. So let's hear what he has to say about it.
Have you ever seen lightning bugs in real life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, right? As a kid,
Oh, yeah.
there are places you can go to. And so if you put one in a jar, when it lights up, you can see for a moment. But if you collect lightning bugs, and that's you and you and you and all the people who watch the podcast, your jar never goes dark. You can see in the dark because you've got, well, you can spot lightning bugs. You spot them, you see them. And sometimes, sometimes they're people, sometimes they're entrepreneurs, sometimes they're administrators, but you can spot a lightning bug and you think that goes in my jar. That goes in my jar. Follow on Twitter, follow on Instagram, follow on TikTok.
Yes.
And don't collect the dark ones. And
Right.
you'll be fine.
Right. He is just phenomenal. And I can just listen to him. He's just, that mind of his is incredible.
The first area we're going to look at is building relationships. And now more than ever, we've learned that building relationships is essential. And we need solid skills in order to do that. But sometimes people just say, how do I go about doing that? They want some things they can hold on to or some ideas.
Yeah.
Our society is so divided right now that it's really difficult sometimes for people to build relationships, even within their own families, because of all of the divisiveness that's out there. So the highlights that we want to show you give you some really concrete ways that you can begin to build those relationships. So let's look at some of those guests right now.
Let's make a promise, because a promise implies action. We are promising to our families, our students, our community, and that promise is to know every student by name, strength, and need, so they graduate prepared for the future they choose.
Like, you have to have people giving back to the next generation. And the next generation has to realize there are really good stories and experiences that they should listen to. And I think that's become, very clear.
Yes. And when you condescend, you cannot be curious. Curiosity. It requires interest. Yes. That's what it is. Yes. And interest means there's something you want to learn. There's something valuable. And so when you're condescending, you're not open.
So, just in that last clip there for building relationships, we heard from Monica, and she really honed in on the importance of being curious and not shying away from some of the more controversial issues. And that's what we really spent a lot of time doing, is making sure that we focused on cultural responsiveness, which sometimes is controversial in schools and society. Shouldn't be, but it is. And so we really spent time and dedicated our learning to that, and learning from experts to be empathetic and to be inclusive. And we are sharing those voices on our podcast. And let's look at a couple of those now.
59.1% feel unsafe at school because they face discrimination on their sexual orientation.
Wow. What are the ages? Sorry, I just want to double check on that.
Middle through high school is generally the participant age.
Okay.
We've got 42%, 43% that don't feel safe because of their gender identity.
The disparity in suspension and expulsion rates among students here in California. And then when you started looking at the subgroups, you saw that it was a Black male or Latino student was 9 times more likely to be suspended than their white male counterparts for the exact same infractions on campus. If you get a discipline infraction, i.e. a suspension or even expulsion, very early in your schooling, and in fact, one of the things I share, which is it's data that is important to recognize, is that the grade level that constitutes the highest percentage of Black male and Latino students being suspended or expelled from school is preschool.
Oh. You learn how to teach through your students. You can see their faces. You can see whether they're connecting with what you're teaching. You can see whether they're connecting with what you have in your classroom, right? And the first step to being a culturally responsive teacher is just truly understanding and communicating with the students that you're servicing.
You need to look at this through a lens very, very carefully, because you're looking at, like, let's say I see a woman from China applying for an English position. I have to fight that bias that I have, that I see for myself. And this is somebody who's, I feel like, very well trained, well educated about this. And I have to say, okay, let's look at her experiences. Let's go through her references and see if she is actually the best candidate for the job. And so I put everything aside and then look at her as a candidate, not because she's Chinese and not because she's a woman either,
Remove the stereotype, view the person.
Correct.
Yeah.
Honestly, when you see someone, you think something, just check it. Just say, hey, I thought this about this person. Why?
Right.
Why did you do that? If you even just ask your question, just why, then you raise your own awareness into that.
All right, that's easy.
Yeah, that is easy.
So the next category that we have several podcasts in is the category of collaboration. And if we've learned one thing from this pandemic, it is that we are a global community, a community with needs, problems that need to be solved through collaboration. And we're going to give you a few clips, one which shows how schools are collaborating to solve real world problems. And the other one is the innovative global collaboration, which shows how a school in Kenya, Africa, is collaborating with Missouri to solve real world problems.
That was a cool one. Let's see it.
Create an impact campaign. They talk about storytelling. How are they going to share their idea out with the world? They're doing research, they're doing interviews, they're getting feedback, the whole process. And then at the end, we have a celebration of learning, which is our day of solutions. And so we all come together and all of the classrooms are able to share their ideas. We had 3,600 classrooms participate this year from over 120 countries, and it was pretty darn cool.
The world has become like a global village, so we want to interact with the world. We want to interact with the globe and see where education is outside of Kenya. And so that is how we got ourselves into this collaboration, and we look forward to success in this partnership.
And Naomi, I think that part of this global village, the pandemic has really shown us that we are all in this together. And I hope that it really pushes global learning even further than it's been.
So obviously collaboration is necessary to solve our world problems, and critical thinking is an important component to this work. So our podcast guests here in these clips talk about using the design thinking process and creativity to develop critical thinking skills and give our listeners some solid ideas to begin this tough work. What is a wicked problem? I know you've mentioned that before. What is that?
So a wicked problem are the kinds of problems that we're all facing in the real world right now. It's not a problem that you can find an answer to and put it in a box and box it around, because there isn't any one clear answer. The world is a complicated place. There's a lot of complicated individuals at the center of these problems. So when you think about a wicked problem, sort of a New England way of saying wicked hard, right? You're thinking about problems that involve different people and by nature, different perspectives, which means that there isn't going to be any one singular truth. There's going to be different perspectives that you're going to have to reconcile. And so one thing we do a lot in design thinking is that we diverge and then we converge, and we diverge and we converge. And I like to think of like a big trap opening and closing and opening and closing, because what you're doing is that when you're diverging, you're creating as many choices as possible, options for yourself, different ideas. Again, remember, quantity over quality. So this might be happening in a really good brainstorming session. And by the way, we have data from my lab at MIT, from my graduate studies lab at MIT, that correlates that the best ideas come after the most ideas. They don't come at the end, but the quality index of ideas increases the more ideas you have. Imagine that. You're kind of like flushing a system, right? Imagine you have like old pipes in there and you're trying to get these ideas out. So what's going to come out first is the rusty old waters, right? Before you have that good, clean, pristine water. So if that can show, not tell you, if that can help visualize the idea for you, we know, science knows that the more ideas you have, the better your ideas will be getting. So you're diverging, you're creating options for yourself. And then you're saying, okay, wait a minute. Some decisions have to be made here. And you're thinking, what are my parameters? What are my truths? What did I learn? What do people really need? What do they want? What are their pain points? What is my customer? What is my user really trying to express? And what have they not been able to articulate that I want to test out? So you're going to make these decisions go down, and you're going to converge into only a few decisions, only a few choices. And you're going to take some of those choices and you're going to prototype them. And by prototype them, prototype is a Greek word. It just means prototipos. It just means the first version of something. I don't want it to be perfect. Remember, not quality. I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to be some model of something that says, this is what I'm thinking about. Can I give this to you? And can you tell me what you think? Because if I show you that at the beginning, when my idea is still very raw, when you think it's not ready for the world to see, that's exactly when I want to see it. It goes back to fail early, fail often, right? I want to get it wrong as early as possible. I don't want to wait 5 months and get it right at the end. I want to get it wrong on week 2.
And the challenge really is that if humans don't think naturally sort of out of the box, we go to the comfortable places where we can. Our brains are kind of hardwired to go back to known solutions. And so whatever we do, the status quo is constantly pulling us back down to things that we already know, because at some point they may have worked, or they may have worked partially. And what we're advocating in Think NATO is you got to get outside that to be truly innovative. And there's a lot of examples of people that have done that.
Yeah, in this really simplistic way, the way our brains hardwire over time, we have these synapses that fire. And if they fire enough times, there's a little neural pathway that's created. And so right now I'm thinking and talking. I don't have to sort of work at vocalization because I have a pre-existing neural pathway, right? I don't get up in the morning and have to relearn how to walk or put my clothes on. So it allows us to function in the world. What it doesn't do is create new neural pathways. Once they're set, it's really hard to change them. And this explains why it's so difficult and so unnerving to imagine things that don't exist, right? Because we're working with a very fixed kind of mindset.
Yes, I enjoyed the design thinking episodes and have used some of it with my work with our leadership team at ClassLINK. So it's been very helpful. But our next category is the social emotional learning. And that has hit education charts like never before. In these episodes, we look at the concrete and innovative ways to support our educators and students.
Our mission is to transform youth, schools, and communities through holistic practices, understanding when my body, my mind, and heart are in balance, I am at my best state. I am at my optimal state, right? And understanding the body has its own infinite intelligence, right? And what we put inside of our body actually creates what we feel inside of our body. So the importance of proper health and nutrition, the importance of moving my body, releasing stress and anxiety, trauma from my body, and understanding the mind is similar to the body. What we put in our mind becomes our well-being. So am I putting junk music, junk TV, just like fast food can be bad for our bodies, those things can be bad for our minds. And the mind is like a garden, right? And if I could just tend to that garden a little bit more delicately, in a more intentionally, you'll see a different state of mind come out and you'll see the world in a different place. And that last aspect is the heart. And this heart holds so much, right? And a lot of people, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, especially in the pandemic, a lot of people have a lot of pain in their hearts that they haven't dealt with. All right, let me put my blinders on and go about work and school and community and just do things to distract me from what's inside my heart. But we have to heal this space. We have to open ourselves up to loving ourselves authentically so we can share love elsewhere authentically, and that's where we do a lot of the deep practices. Mindfulness is like a prerequisite, but we go into the breath work, the sound, a lot of different healing modalities to help individuals heal this space so they can see that infinite power within themselves.
In general, I think the framework generally for parenting teens, but with social media too, is kind of the warm and firm approach. So firm being, set clear limits about what's okay and not okay when it comes to social media and stick with those. And that's the hard part because it's very, very hard. We know it's hard setting rules and it's hard sticking with those rules. But as much as parents can have in advance with their teen being aware, like what is going to be the consequence if this rule gets broken, and then following through if it does get broken. So that's kind of the firm piece. The warm piece is exactly what it sounds like. So although being sort of strict and clear about the rules, still having a warm approach. So very validating, helping your teen understand that what they're feeling and experiencing makes sense, that you still love them despite all of maybe these things happening on social media, and really keeping those lines of communication open. Because I think one of the risks sometimes that we run into is, a teen shares something maybe negative that's happening on social media, and the obvious natural reaction is, fear on the part of the parent, and maybe then trying to limit the social media use or to kind of shut it off or to say, oh, you can't do that anymore online. But the risk of that is that then I think the teen feels like, oh, I can't come to my parent in the future and tell them when something wrong has happened or when something bad has happened on social media.
Now, technology plays an important role in the success of education, but it also presents some challenges as well. So we're going to take a look at this next category of ed challenges and listen to some of our fabulous LinkedUp guests in this category.
The other big elephant in the room that we've noticed a lot of our district leaders are right now struggling with is data privacy. Like everything now is online. When COVID hit, everybody was offering something free. But where is your data going? Like that's a big thing that's staring us down, down in our eyes at, are we thinking of that? And that's a lot of like what Diane says, like your IT and technology leaders in the district is, they can't sleep at night because they're worrying about the sustainability model. They're worrying about data privacy and keeping your information safe, but also with everyone being home, like a lot of our districts, and I know a lot of Ville districts, they had to now, how do we support devices at home and how do we support parents? So we have a lot of districts that's developing parent universities because we're teaching not just the student, we're teaching the whole family how to help support their kid at home, how to get on this application, how to do that. So, streamlining all of that stuff, coming into one-stop shop, a lot of districts have been doing. And ultimately, the other piece is, how do we reach the most marginalized kids
and this is something that the league has been, talking about and getting our district leaders to talk about. If the kid doesn't have internet access or doesn't have cell phone service, how are you going to reach them? So, where are the places that you can reach them? Where are they going? They go to public libraries. They go to public barbershops. They may go to Boys and Girls Club. So now districts are now having to now reach out beyond their normal perimeters, if you will. And a lot of our district leaders have become like the main hub of information when COVID hit. So it's a lot of pressure on them, but it also has now privied them to another aspect or another realm of communication and transparency.
Love to see a collective voice, collective effort, and collective solidarity across the entire swath of education to push for the internet to be designated as a utility, because you still have urban families and rural families that do not have access.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends that work in districts that, their districts could be 200 square miles. And they have families that, of course, they're either on farms or they're just in their home. They don't have broadband access.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the hotspot, again, is triage, because you hand out a hotspot. How do you know they're going to have there's a cell tower that's within a reasonable distance for those families to be able to connect in the first place?
Right.
Now you go to the urban environments and you have the same thing around families that don't have internet access.
In that book, it's like, what changed? What has changed? Where now we're at that level. Something happened. It didn't just suddenly out of nowhere. Well, social media happened. All this connectivity happened, and it disconnected us from many of the things that stabilize us, from our friends and relationships, marriage, family, the church. All these things are what we call stabilizing social structures. And young people have become untethered from all these things. And the impact is that. So this idea, I think that we need to somehow encourage wellness behaviors. It's not a miracle that you feel good or you're healthy physically and mentally. There are habits that you can cultivate, including a good diet, including exercise, time away from your screen, time in relationships with friends and family, where you're just talking without being mediated by a device. And these are the kinds of things that I'm outlining in this book. It's a road back to wellness. And that's really what this book is about. And that's what I think we need as a society, and as the adults and leaders in the society, the teachers, the professors. We need to encourage these kinds of behaviors so that we can get these kids back on this road to happiness, road to wellness again.
I'll have to say that left to their own devices really opened my eyes as to some of the things we need to be thinking about as a society and as schools.
Absolutely. But, I guess it was around our 25th episode, we realized, wow, some of these themes from our podcast are really coming together nicely.
Right.
So as you may know or may not know, we have built choice boards around these themes. And what that means is that you as a learner can go into our choice boards, and in these themes, you can see all of the podcasts that are centered around these themes. When you click show more, you'll see an assortment of others. So not only can you choose to listen to podcasts from within our themes of building relationships and collaboration and critical thinking, cultural responsiveness, ed challenges, social emotional learning, and student engagement, but also you can choose, of course, the mode of listening, either YouTube, Spotify, or iTunes. And also, if any of our guests have written a book, then you can have an easy access to their book as well. But don't forget that when you listen to any 3 of our podcasts within a choice board, then you can just go to this form, fill it out, and receive 0.5 CEU credits. So please check it out. And don't forget to follow us on all of our social platforms. Also subscribe on YouTube. But please check out all of our amazing choice boards so that you can kind of learn in a nice, beautiful package around these themes.
And the thing I love the best about it is that we can bring all of these amazing people to educators and just people that are interested in education. They can listen to this in their bunny slippers.
Sure.
They can listen to what they want to listen to.
Yep.
And I just love that ClassLink is dedicated to providing them that credit for free. That's so important.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Jerri, there is no one that I would rather do this linked up journey with than with you. So cheers to 100 and cheers to 100 more. Why not?
100 more. That's right.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.